You're watching the JJ Podcast.
Joel Jammal is an Australian conservative commentator, political activist, and media figure best known for leading Turning Point Australia. He frames his work as equipping Australians to defend personal freedoms, question power, and engage more directly in politics. He is known to host the ARC podcast, deliver public commentary on elections and policy, and organise events featuring high-profile conservative figures. And today, we talk with him about Turning Point Australia, the state of politics in Australia today, freedom of speech, and censorship within online and mass media.
Well, Joel, CEO of Turning Point Australia, thank you so much for your time today. I just want to start with where it all began in terms of your connection with Turning Point. It obviously has become very, I believe, front and centre off the back of Charlie Kirk's assassination. But I just want to start with where your involvement all began.
Sure. So welcome to the ARC studio. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Very cool, by the way.
No, not at all. Make yourself at home. But we were talking about Turning Point before we came on. And the introduction for me was made with Nigel Farage. I had participated in some of the tours in bringing him to Australia. And he really took a liking to us. He really trusted us to actually handle the Turning Point brand. And he connected us with Charlie Kirk and basically said, hey, these are the guys to run it. They've already built a significant following in Australia through COVID and through standing up to the lockdowns. And these are people that we can trust to basically carry that banner of freedoms of speech and Christian values and into Australia and grow your movement. And so it's been 4 years, and I've got a huge debt I owe to Charlie Kirk for what he did, which is why I was over there recently. But yeah, he was a good man.
Well, why don't you tell us about, we could watch it over here on TV and the funeral and the service. It looked very, very moving, but also just the sheer volume of people that were not just inside the stadium, but those out in the car park. It looked like it was in the hundreds of thousands of numbers. Just talk us through what that was like and the loss of someone that has played a pivotal role in your life.
It's quite insane because as soon as you get to America, automatically completely different country. They hold everything that they value on their heart. They wear it on their sleeve. It's always on their lips, whether it's an Uber driver or the lady that's checking you into your flight. It's like the whole city stopped for this event. In the lead up to it, because we arrived 4 or 5 days before it, we were outside the Turning Point headquarters in Arizona, Phoenix, and the whole city was bracing for this flood of people to come in. On the day of the memorial, I was up and at the stadium at 4 a.m. Sun hadn't come up, and there were some 20,000 people at the outside the stadium lining up.
Wow.
And I didn't even make it into the main stadium. So 60,000 people got into that stadium before I'd even gotten the chance to go in. And then in the overflow, which is where we ended up, there was another 20,000. And then there was at least another 40,000 in the car park that never got in at all, in anywhere. And so in moments where Erica Kirk came out, when we were in the overflow stadium, before she said a word, there was not a dry eye around me. And we're talking grown men sitting next to us. There was a black fellow, there was a white fellow next to me in their late 50s, and tears streaming down their eyes before she'd even said a word. It was in that moment, I happened to be already scheduled for a call with Ben Fordham. It was totally by accident, the timing. I really didn't want to jump on because I'd be leaving that experience. But I said, mate, there's not a dry eye here. Everyone is in tears. This is like a national mourning day. And I don't know that I'll see that again. I really don't know that I'll see that again in my life. It was very much felt like it was a black swan event.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's hard to describe. It's very difficult to describe, but it was very moving.
You mentioned that this was 4 years ago that it started for you with Turning Point Australia, and obviously off the back of the death of Charlie Kirk, I think I spoke with you on the phone the day you were flying out and have had a little bit of contact with you since returning, and it's been an insane few weeks for you. So what has happened here in Australia off the back of that? What are you hearing? And, how has the growth been for Turning Point Australia? Visits to your website, people signing up, etc.
So we got something like 5,000 emails in a few days. We had been inundated with requests to start new chapters across the country. We also had our Facebook page grow 184,000 new followers. So we were on 100,000. Now we're on 193,000 followers. 293,000 followers. So we'd grown almost 200,000 new followers had jumped onto the Facebook page, skyrocketing us to the 5th biggest Facebook page in the nation with politics. So if that's a measure of the interest or the impact Charlie had, it really broke algorithmic barriers we'd had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was talking about Charlie Kirk. The media, mainstream media, finally had me on a lot of their channels. They'd been ignoring me due to the COVID years. I was too early on COVID, unfortunately, and it sucks to be early. And so all of a sudden they were like, oh, I didn't know we had a Turning Point Australia. Oh, no, been here, I've only accrued 500 million views online. There's very clearly a market, but this really took us to a stratospheric level, and a lot of the work we've been doing early on advocating for Charlie and his values and the election work we do really came to the forefront, and people were very pleased to see that we were there. And that's why we went to the US to cover that, to thank Charlie, to thank the Turning Point family. And we caught up with a few people over there while we were there in the management. And I have a huge debt to I owe Charlie. It really is. I never met him in person, so I never really got to articulate that. So it was very difficult for me. And I can only imagine how difficult it was for those that were very close personal friends, spending 13 years building that organization. And so
13 years.
Yeah.
But it wasn't successful at the start when Charlie Kirk first came up with the idea. But what do you think it was about his death that sent the Turning Point Australia into those numbers that you just spoke about? Because I don't think, into what you just said, people weren't aware of the organisation even here, and it's taken the assassination of someone like Charlie Kirk. And I remember even seeing on the news that one of the journos that was being interviewed was like, but why do Australians care? And he was blown away by how many Australians were so upset and distraught by the loss of Charlie Kirk. So what do you think it was about this moment that then drove everyone to now start looking for a Turning Point Australia?
Well, I think we underestimate the power of algorithmic silos that have been created. See what happened with the journalist. He didn't realize how much this mattered to people. He's in a bit of a silo. He's in a bit of a media bubble.
Echo chamber.
Same thing happens with Canberra. It's the reason why Canberra is the only place that voted for The Voice, whereas the rest of Australia overwhelmingly voted no. The same things happened with our following. Is we have been algorithmically kneecapped. For 3 years, we hadn't grown on Facebook. We were getting plenty of views. We were getting something like 100 million views on average every year. So there's very clearly a market. But to see no growth, that doesn't make any sense. We would be getting no views then. And so we know the dates. We know exactly when they kneecapped our following. It was early 2022, late 2021. We'd skyrocketed. We'd seen amazing growth, and then it flatlines. And if you've seen that, you understand our tech overlords are trying to kneecap populist movements. They don't like right-wing movements that are proud of their Christian roots and the values that made Australia great. And so it was an algorithmic change that happened, and they were censoring words like Turning Point Australia. They were censoring words like Charlie Kirk. I remember previous years, Turning Point USA, which had a couple million views, we had better engagement than them. And it's not because we were doing our job better. Our tech overlords have that much power. Mm-hmm. And until we realize that, I've written a number of articles in 2019 to Scott Morrison saying, you need to address this, otherwise it will cost you elections. And that is exactly what we may see in the future with Karen or the e-safety commissioner. And so, but on a personal level, why did this impact people? I think that people really did feel that Charlie was the best of our values. He was the embodiment of Christian values. He always talked to people with a sense of putting their best foot forward. His first step in an argument was finding that common ground off the get-go and saying, okay, so let me get this straight. Is this what you believe? No? Okay, so it's this. And then I say, yes. well, I actually agree with this, but I think this is the line where we disagree.
Finding that moral standing, yeah.
That conciliatory approach is one where you can really feel as an American, we are in this together and we are trying to very difficultly work out the truth, and it's messy, but move forward in a national sense, in a very conciliatory, unified sense. The idea that he was shot and he was taken and his voice was taken by being shot in the throat, a lot of military men have been in tears because that's why they put their life on the line. They say, I should have copped that bullet, not Charlie. I fought and I saw my friends die in these foreign battlefields so that Charlie could do his job. He's not the person that's meant to be shot, and nonetheless by an American. And so I think that's why it's impacted so people on a level that maybe other deaths haven't. But guys, this was a black swan event. I mean, this is very unusual. When I was in America, the aura was like, other Americans explained it to me, older Americans, said it was a bit like after 9/11, that we all kind of are going through this joint experience together. 9/11 was more one of anger, frustration, wanting to get bastards back, people enlisting into the military and going and fighting in these foreign wars. But this was one more of sadness, celebration of a life, but also a renewing of what America is and the values that make them great. And I think that is probably the best compliment to Charlie. There were no riots. It was very much just a celebration of him as a leader and someone speaking out. And so, I hope that answers your question.
I think it shook the world up in has politics really stooped to this level? I think whether you're on the left or on the right, realising that speaking your mind has become a dangerous game and then going, hang on a minute, where's our democracy and where's our freedom? But I agree with what he said, and he didn't deserve to die. I think there was a real wake up in, I need to have a voice, I need to do something. This is not the right trajectory. But I just want to ask you something. You mentioned just before, we've just discussed, obviously, algorithms, numbers, growth. You mentioned chapters, state chapters. How has that come about? Obviously, there's been a lot that's happened recently with George Jammal and South Australia. I didn't notice chapters in America. Have I missed that, or are we doing something different? Was it state chapters?
Yeah, no. So they have, not only do they have chapters in America, they had 162 new requests for chapters. So that's chapters meaning, for those of you, it's a foreign term. I have to admit it was the first time I'd heard it. I thought of chapters as being a religious thing. Chapters are basically a gathering of people, a safe space for conservatives, Christians to come together and talk about their values. Charlie started this 13 years ago on the campuses, the college campuses, their universities. And he would set up these chapters to basically give people a safe space there to actually have their values. Because at the universities, if you guys haven't been there for a while, it's a bit of a cesspit. People don't actually propose to stand for values that made America great. You actually get bullied for having that. You get marked down on your tests because of that. And we're seeing that in Australia. The universities are the factories of the bad ideas. So in Australia, I was warned by the Americans when I was over there. They said, don't go too quickly. You are well ahead of Charlie. I know you're only 4 years into the operation, but in terms of where Charlie was at 4 years, your following is much larger comparatively. You're in a much further position, which lends itself to the credibility of Turning Point USA and as a brand. But they said, be careful who you let in. Be careful how quickly you go. You don't want to overstretch yourself and then underdeliver. And so I worked with them when I was over there a couple of weeks ago to work out a strategy. And the best way to do it is basically to slowly stagger it election by election. We've got South Australia in 6 months. 6 months after that is Victoria's state election. 6 months after that is New South Wales state election. As soon as you know it, we'll have the other states as well, Tasmania, Queensland, WA, and then it's going to be a federal election. So if we get SA right, South Australia, and we do these college events, we nail the election, the projects, if we can back Conservative parties in South Australia, that's going to be a really good template for the other states. Now, we've had a lot of interest, a lot of people saying, well, we want to get started now. If they're really serious about it and they really want to, they will not be they'll slow burn. They'll still be interested in the future. there's a lot of people who've got to be careful. They did it because it was trendy. Let's send Turning Point an email and say, yep, I'm ready to do this, this and that. See where you're at in 3 months. Let's see after Christmas if you're still that keen.
So this now is an interesting part of your movement, and where I see a difference between what was going on in the US and what you appear to be doing here. I was having a look at your website, and there's a video on there that's basically saying to those that are watching, don't vote Liberal and don't vote Labor. And so I watched that and I thought, so what is the end game for Turning Point Australia? Because Charlie was obviously very, very vocal on the Conservative side and was very pro-Trump, and he'd be out at Trump rallies, and Trump does credit getting that younger demographic in because of Charlie. So when I saw on the website that you're saying don't vote Liberal and don't vote Labor, I thought, is Turning Point Australia going to form their own party and that's where you're starting to head people? Or will you be recommending to voters what you think they should be going towards? I just found it interesting that you were sort of saying no to both of the main parties.
No, look, I don't think it's possible to say no to both of the parties because we have preferential voting. However, the US were very clear to us 4 years ago. They said, you're not allowed to start a political party and you're not allowed to back one party.
Interesting.
How does that work? Because everything he said, I mean, they don't have a preferential system. It's first past the post, so much easier. But
I agree.
He was Trump the whole time.
So Turning Point UK, I know the guys there, they started 6 years ago. Okay. They were given the same marching orders. Now, the reason why it's like that is in America, it is a two-party system. If you vote Libertarian, if you vote for any other party, it is very much truly a wasted vote. In the UK and in Australia, we have a parliamentary democracy. We have some 20 parties. And as we can see in the UK, Nigel Farage is about to eat the lunch of the Conservative Party. So if we said the same thing that you're saying to me now, then Turning Point UK, well, they have to just back the Conservatives in the UK just because it's a two-party system? Not at all. Every now and then these things get shaked up. Now, Turning Point Australia's job is not to back one party. It's not to be a kingmaker. We've fought 20 elections in the last 4 years, and we've always backed the Liberals before Labor because we have preferential voting, right? So we serve a critical purpose in saying to the Liberals, this is the bar. We will be uncompromising in Charlie's values of conservatism and the Menzies Institute's We Believe statement. 100%. Problem is the Liberals are a broad church, too broad.
Yeah.
It's our job to bring them back and say, this is the bar. If you're compromising, we will dangle the carrot and we will go and back other minor parties, whether that's One Nation or the other parties. But we will eventually preference you and make sure that the votes flow back to you. So in the last federal election, we had 250,000 people use our How to Vote cards. That's about 1.5% of the voters that actually turn up and vote. That flowed to the Liberals. What unfortunately happens with a lot of people that are unhappy with the Liberals is they don't preference the Liberals. So we are actually stemming the bleeding. We should be thanked by the Liberals for doing that. Whereas a lot of people, they're like, no, screw the Liberals. I'm going to go vote One Nation, or I'm going to go vote Libertarian 1, and then I'm going to vote Labor 2, just to really nail them.
You've just given your whole vote to Labor.
100% against that. We're 100% against that. That should not be happening. And so we are following Charlie's philosophy in that sense. We don't believe in backing the Libs blindly across the board. There are gradations of Liberal Party people. The Liberals in Victoria are not the same as the New South Wales Liberals or the South Australian Liberals.
Queensland.
And this is where we rely on our network of people in every state. This is why we are building our chapters so that we can have really good eyes and ears. And we're not amateurs. We haven't been around just yesterday. We've been fighting 20 elections in the country. We're the only organisation in the country that fights all elections, including local elections. No organisation fights local elections in New South Wales or Victoria. And so there is a market. At the election, 1.5% of voters use our resources. And that's not us advertising it. That's people in our audience coming to us and saying, I trust you, Joel. I've seen your videos. I trust your opinion. What do you really think about my candidate in this area versus Zali Steggall? Of course you should back the Liberals, 100%. But we need to make sure that we build that permanent infrastructure. Exactly what Charlie did in the US. He was chasing the ballot. We don't do that here so much. We've got mandatory voting. We're all about informing voters and teaching them how to hand out, how to vote card, how the Labor Party have been failing us. And so you might have seen one video. I can assure you I did not say don't vote them. It's more that the bars up here, the Liberals are failing. Before the next election, the Liberals need to pick up their game. And we'll continue to preference the Liberals, but we want to give them the top spot.
Mm.
And in order to earn the top spot, the bar's here. And so.
Well said.
Sure.
So how do people get involved in your organisation?
Sure. Look, if anyone's listening, if they head to tpaust.com.au, you can join up. You can join our supporters page. We'll be in contact with regards to what we're doing. I'm very excited about South Australia because what that's going to look like is getting a lot of resources out, nailing the Labor Premier, nailing the failures of Labor, and talking about how they can actually breathe their values into politics, whether that's getting the Turning Point Australia resources out. We do 6 different election resources, which I won't bore you with, but they revolve around transparency with the political process. What their members of parliament, the Labor government, have been doing with their money for 4 years and actually showing them a better way to vote. And so that is really what people are asking for in this busy day and age. You know, my sister, she's got 3 kids. She doesn't have time to research the Strathfield candidates. And so she says, Joel, you know, who should I be voting for? That's what we do with the election projects, and our volunteers, they help get involved by spreading the word on that, whether that's sharing videos or our election projects.
What are some of the things that you're hearing on the ground from people that are genuine concerns about, you know, cost of living is something that always comes up, but what are some of the other issues that you're hearing from people right across the board?
I think number 1 is cost of living. Number 2 is immigration. And number 3 is the net zero stuff. People aren't stupid. I think they've seen what the Liberals have been doing for the last 10 years, really. And they're not happy with the mass spending during COVID. I think a lot of people, they don't buy what the Liberals said during COVID. I think the federal government, the Treasurer under Josh Frydenberg, they did spend too much, and then that was continued under Labor. So the Liberals have lost the credibility of being the fiscally responsible ones. But then number 2, the idea that under the Liberals, we also saw mass immigration just go to another level. That's not okay. That is not okay. And unfortunately, people like myself, my family came here in the late 60s from Lebanon and Syria. They're Christians that were, you know, keen to start a new life. It was a very different time in terms of the amount of immigration. We came, we integrated. I don't even speak Arabic anymore, unfortunately. But I'm very proud of Australia, and we owe Australia a debt. The immigrants coming today, they don't have any intention of integrating. They don't share our values. They're too busy protesting in the street about foreign conflicts. And unfortunately, this is a policy that has been really taken to another level with Labor. And they're able to get away with it because the Liberals are being weak on it. And again, I if I can preface what I'm saying, I don't hate the Liberals. I love the Liberals in that they're a family member, and I'm trying to, with love, chide them and say, guys, you need to be better. You're my son or you're my daughter. I want you to be better. And my family traditionally voted Liberal, and you lost us because of this reason. And so there's a lot of immigrants or the children of immigrants like myself where we want to regain our senses as a nation, as a party, and see us come back to a place where we're fiscally responsible, we bring cost of living down, we deal with immigration again. You know, 30% of the country is foreign-born, 52% of the country is either foreign-born or the children of immigrants. That's too much. We are not integrating. That is not going to work.
Yeah.
And so the Aussie accent is going to go extinct. I don't think people realize that. It is going, you're not going to see guys like me that have the Aussie accent. It's just going to go extinct. And that's a real tragedy because, you know, I'd like to think we're endeared around the world. Wherever we go, there's immediate trust. But the third thing being the climate change situation, that is, we've totally lost the plot with that. The idea that we're just going to cut off our nose to spite our face and not provide
destroy the climate to protect the climate.
But also the economy in the process.
How do businesses operate? How do we operate with, you know, the expensive studio and the lights and the energy? It kills the entrepreneurial spirit. It totally, they say, corporations, they don't want to invest in this power plant or that energy project. Well, that's because incentives are destiny, my friend. Why would they, when the government's saying, banks, you shouldn't allow investments in this, or you should dissuade people? It's totally dishonest. And I think that's why Anthony Albanese was heckled in Ballarat, was it?
Yeah.
And I think that
Summit.
So in short, look, those are the top three things: cost of living, immigration, and climate change. Yeah.
And just going on that list of things, obviously we see very, very similar stuff with comments on our page, much smaller than yours, of course, but still we get thousands of comments flooding in. And a lot of them are saying the Liberals are no different to Labor. That seems to be the biggest issue at the moment, is that there's not an extreme differentiation with policies and things like that. That gets me on to freedom of speech. So you mentioned before, people are wanting to say this stuff, but then they're getting labelled and shut down when they do. If they mention the immigration thing, they're racist. If they mention the fact that, the net zero increased emissions targets is too crazy, too intense, and it's hurting our economy, well, then you're a climate denier. We've just seen what's happened with George this week. So he didn't even get off the ground, and Instagram got banned, and we've had a similar thing happen that we've mentioned to you in case anyone watching this didn't see. We were banned from TikTok. So has Meta given you any insight as to why that happened?
No, there's no number you can talk to. It is just, this is how it is, and it's about to get worse. It is about to get worse. So we are going to see this censorship. But also from our political class, again, to go back to the Liberals and immigration, I mean, we had protests, the March for Australia on the 31st of August. I initially opposed it, and then I eventually said, look, I'm hearing bad things out of Melbourne and Sydney, but you should still go if you want to go. If you don't want to go, maybe don't go. Well, let's see what happens. Let's see what the wash-up is. But then to see the demonization of those protests after the fact by Liberals, of all people, like Brad Batten in Victoria saying, all of them are Nazis, basically, essentially saying that. He didn't say that verbatim, but like at least other Liberals in other states were like, look, for the most part, these were just average people that disagree with immigration, want to see it brought down. Yes, there was a radical element in the organizational wing, but that shouldn't taint the brand. Guys, that's what the Greens and Labor do. That is the yin and the yang of Greens and Labor. That's why they're a winning team. The Greens say something absolutely out there. We want to end this tomorrow, all fossil fuels, and we want to stop cows from fighting. Labor's like, all right, let's just bring it back. Hang on, good cop, bad cop. We don't want that, but we want 50% of what they proposed. This is what we've got to do. And the Liberals need to understand their place in the world and tactics. And I think that a lot of people just see that and they're like, oh, you just want to be Labor Lite. So this is going to be a rerun of 2022, the election against Dan Andrews. Labor's going to increase their majority in a year for Victoria, our second biggest state. Well, guys, this is where it's going. Like we are in the fight of our nation. That we are sitting with brand new laws in South Australia and New South Wales, and electorally we are about to be wiped out in South Australia. And nationally, we have a situation where Labor has a standing committee on elections. They want to add more senators, add more politicians, more control to Canberra. We have a closing window of 6 years. We have to work out what the left are doing right, and we need to reverse engineer it for our side. Turning Point's a part of that. The Liberal Party is a part of that. So are even the minor parties, to maybe the Liberal Party's chagrin. But we've got to get this country back on track, because if we don't, we will be going the Venezuela route. And I don't think any of us, my family don't want to see that happen. And so, yeah.
We've been talking about the issue of free speech and people being silenced or name called if you have a differing opinion. How do we get back to the point, Joel, where we can have debate, and instead of just debating on faith, we can be debating on logic and actually being open to listening to other people's point of view without being absolutely crucified for having that thought? Most people are too afraid to voice how they feel because of the online attack that they will get or verbally abused in the street. How do we get as a nation back to a point where we can have open discussions?
Well, first things first, we've got to recognize that this is a marathon. There are things that Charlie said that were unchanged, 13 years, but it's a bit like, it's aged like a fine wine. It's become quite popular more recently. And women have a good sense of this in America. We are seeing the turn of the tide in America. In the UK, people are turning to their Christian faith. But women, and it has to be said, attractive women especially, there's a trad wife trend happening in America especially. Women know the way the wind is trending, and the culture is demonstrating that, and politics is downstream from culture. We're seeing that happen over there. We have to recognize we're in a marathon. Don't just burn out. Just take some time off if you need it in this marathon. But we have to get off the bench. If you're sitting on the sidelines and thinking more about how can I build my dinghy to leave Australia, maybe let's make sure that you don't have to build the dinghy. Maybe let's apply ourselves rather than waiting for 6 years and starting the stopwatch and trying to actually apply ourselves in these elections. Get off the bench. Some of our best troops are on the bench. And I understand why. I understand politics is dirty. But we have to recognize we are in a marathon for the soul of our nation. And guys, is there anywhere else you would rather live? My answer is no. I was born and bred in Parramatta. I went to school at the King's School there. I want to send my boys there. I want to send my girls to Tara. I want to be able to actually hear my accent back at me when I'm growing up. I want them to flourish. I want everyone in Australia to grow. I want to see nation-building projects to make Australia a real superpower in my lifetime. I want to see that. But that doesn't come without earning it. We have to apply ourselves. And so I do see a lot of hope, despite the fact, we are up against it. I see a lot of hope, and I see a lot of people waking up, and Gen Z aren't having it. Gen Z, in 2028, all of Gen Z will be voting, and they are very conservative. Don't get me wrong, they're still left-leaning, the majority, but there is a massive percentage coming up. They're starting ahead of their parents. They don't like the goods that are being sold by Labor. They're growing up. They're the COVID kids that were born. They're the kids that are much like my nieces. They grew up in COVID. They saw the tyranny of government. They don't like censorship. They don't like TikTok being banned. And they're waking up. And so look, the future looks bright. It really does. But we have to apply ourselves and provide the tools to the Australian people and the arguments and the strategies to win. So.
Well, you keep saying that it's a marathon, and whilst I totally agree with you, it is a long game. There's a frustration in me, in both of us as mums. We've got young boys, because part of me is like, yeah, it's the long game. And the other part of me is like, no, they can destroy the country really bloody quickly. Like 3 years. And I mean, we've got one of the shorter terms. Is it 5 years in the UK, 4 years in America? So, we're lucky that it's short here, but I mean, they can do detrimental damage in 3 years in terms of policies, 1 million people flooding in the country, etc. So part of me is like, yeah, relax, it's a long game. And then the other part of me is like, no, panic stations, we've got to fix it now. So What do you say to that? And what do you say when censorship takes hold the way it does? How do we avoid that, I don't know, the silencing?
Well, that's a good one because, and to your point, you can't just pick up the phone. And so I always say to people, the only reason why our TikTok was resumed was because we had the ability to call Mark Levy at 2GB and say, hey, we have a problem. And he did this whole big spiel on air, and Senator Jane Hume heard it. Yeah. And so she then was able to contact
and Sky News. We both ended up on different.
And so I always say to people, and Peter Credlin, I also said it to her because she's also a really big voice. Not everyone has that where we can pick up the phone and say, I have a problem. Can you please help me? So I couldn't bear the thought of all the other people whose accounts have been cancelled or
silenced. And they haven't had friends in high places.
And they can't do anything about it. Yeah. And so then they're just silenced, and that's it. Those opinions and that way of thinking is gone.
And we'll never know because forgive me using my own name, but we won't know how many Jaimies there are out there. We don't know how many Joels there are out there that could have done something. They could have been the I don't know, the Brett Cooper of Australia, but she got censored at 500 followers. We would never know. And look, I've never had a number. I've never had an email at any big tech corporation I've been out of contact. When you reach a threshold that you do get a contact, those in government have very easy access to say, hey, just letting you know, forwarding an email. This particular account, Jaimee and Jaimie, they are highlighting XYZ. They might throw whatever their spin over it. Oh, they're doing this or they're incitement there. If you think that big tech actually reviews all these cases, they don't have the time.
No.
The Twitter leaks showed this, and I'm really glad Elon took over Twitter. The Twitter leaks showed this, the requests from government to actually censor certain things during COVID, and which, by the way, weren't rooted in evidence, which time showed. And the idea that those requests were being made because corporations are protected under free speech laws, the idea that these contracts and money was being exchanged from the government to censor Americans. This is a wake-up call. And this is why in the Morrison years in 2019, I did pen an article for The Spectator and said, Morrison, you're in power now, but this door's about to be locked. I don't think you understand the digital age we're in. If you don't deal with this right now and put down legislation or even put up a referendum or something enshrining free speech into the Australian Constitution, then we're going to go nowhere and we're going to be locked out. Labor, what do they do when they're in power? They enshrine their power. They're like, top priority, 2023, we need a voice. We need a voice so that we have a High Court of Australia, just like that. We need to add more senators. We need to lock the Liberals out. Guys, they just know how to wield power better. You know, while we're trying to fix the country, they're trying to hold on to power. They don't care what happens to the country. And so we have to get better at applying ourselves. How do you censorship-proof yourself? That's a longer conversation. I do train people with regards to what we did during COVID without that access to social media. I have 4 accounts on every platform for this reason.
Yeah.
Now, I don't recommend it, but this is what I've had to do during COVID to survive. Email lists are really good, but you have to take certain steps to make sure your emails don't end up in the junk because Google also censor people. There was a lawsuit in 2020, I think it was. The Republican Party took Google to court because 20 million emails were being censored. Now, guys, like, this is so much more advanced. We used to be able to say, just collect people's emails. That is the best thing at this stage, but unfortunately, Google can also censor your stuff as well. There's steps you can take to stop that, but Google is a woke organization. It is not like, Twitter. So we are a small country. We have to make do with what we've got. We've got to be nimble. My door's always open to really anyone on the left or the right. I hate censorship. I really hate censorship. I want to be able to stare at a guy like Conrad, Punters Politics. I'm going to his political fundraiser, for example. We get on well. We disagree on a few things. We agree on other things. But I want to have the discussion now. I don't want some third party to come in and say, no, you can't have that conversation on Islamophobia because you're Islamophobic. Or you can't have this conversation on women because you're not a woman. It's like, excuse me, 66% of my audience are women. I also come from a Middle East background. I can talk on Islam. Or, I have the right to be wrong. And I have the right to be proven wrong by the guy across from me or the girl across from me. And so Aussies have to actually realize what is going on. They might hear, it's good that Djokovic got banned from the country. Yeah, he sounds like a harmful dude because the media told me he was. Guys, we got to apply ourselves. This is an unusual. The idea that our immigration department can just ban someone for their political beliefs, that they have the potential to incite discord. This is not something in New Zealand's law. So this is a really unusual, uniquely Australian problem. And the idea that we just go along with it, this is why people think that we're not the children of convicts, we're the children of prison guards. And so are we the rebels? Are we of the descendants of the Anzac spirit that fought in North Africa and fought in Europe and fought in Asia? Or are we, these very weak, hollowed husk of what we used to be? We have to rediscover what our self is. That's what Charlie, his death really showed. It was a rediscovery of America. And we need to gird our loins and apply ourselves. Yeah.
So, Joel, you've mentioned there's 2 state elections within the next year, but what else does your next 12 months look like? What's the real focus to keep growing Turning Point Australia here?
So we are going to be doing a lot more campus events in South Australia and other states, but we're also going to be launching a number of assaults on government legislation to do with digital ID. Digital ID is a really big one, really pernicious one. We have legislation for the under 16s ban on social media coming in on the 10th of December, so we've got a plan for that. And there are a number of other legislative skirmishes we're going to have. But elections are our stock and trade. Elections have consequences. There's a lot of people saying, what are we going to do about digital ID? And I'm like, guys, we don't control the lower house. Labor has a majority. They've got 90 seats. And in the Senate, it's controlled by the Greens. And the Greens basically want this legislation.
Yeah.
So elections have consequences. This is why when people in the Liberals, in the minor parties say, now is the time. Now is the time to apply yourself. Because if you don't, then we're going to
protest vote and the donkey vote has consequences, people.
Yeah.
Know what you're voting for.
Yeah. Someone once said to me, and forgive me saying, someone once said to me, the less dicks drawn on your ballots, the less dicks you have in Parliament. And I was like, I'm going to steal that.
Yeah.
But look, the elections have consequences, and guys, we've got to end this apathy. We've got to end. I'm not from politics. I'm from construction and property development. I'm not meant to be doing this. There's a lot, I'm not sure about your background, but I'm sure there's plenty of other things you would rather be doing. But this is much like the founding of America. They weren't professional politicians. They were average people that were well read on philosophy, but they'd also had a life. We've got to end the political class. These people that came up through unions, these people that just have always been politicians and been groomed to do this stuff. And we need an injection of the silent Australians into Parliament. And that's why I'm pleased to be chatting to you guys.
Yeah, thank you. Us too.
Well, Joel, we really appreciate your time. You're doing great things. Keep it up, and no doubt you'll continue to grow your base here in Australia.
God bless you. Thank you for your time. Cheers.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you for listening to the JJ podcast.